Hey guys, my name is Haley, and today I'm going to be talking about the books that I plan on reading for the 2020 reading rush. Now, this is like my third year in a row doing this. It's so fun to choose what books fit the challenges, and then I get a couple days in and then I just fall off of it. But thanks to quarantine, I feel like I'm actually gonna have the time, and I'm always pretty smart with my TBRs. I try to just pick one novel to focus on, and the rest are shorter audiobooks or just graphic novels. And that is in the hopes I would love to finish 7 books. Last year, actually, I read a lot, but it was the Princess Diaries. I was rereading them, and they're really easy books to read. But yeah, so I'm also planning on trying to keep up with my vlog this time. Usually that also falls off, and I want to do all the daily challenges. So we will see how much I'm able to get done, but regardless, this is, oh my god, Ren. But we'll see how much I'm able to read. Completely lost my train of thought thanks to this cat. But yes, so let's just get into the TBR before she destroys all of my equipment. A couple of these books are ebooks, and a couple are going to be coming off hold from the library about that time, so I'm not going to have a lot of physical books to show you guys. So the first prompt is to pick a book with a cover the color of your birthstone. I was born in July. My birthstone is ruby, so I'm choosing Interview with the Vampire. This is the cover that I have on my Kindle. I started it like before quarantine, and I got really sucked into it, and then I think just all the chaos of quarantine, I just lost my momentum. So I've been meaning to pick it up. I've had a lot of vampire things in my life recently. I started watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which the beginning especially is very heavy into vampires, and I've been playing D&D The Curse of Strahd. Strahd is a vampire, so I've just had vampires on the brain lately. So I want more, basically. So this is going to be my first vampire book that I read in quite a while. The second prompt is to read a book that starts with the word the. They were saying in the challenge video that this one's harder than you would think because not a lot of titles start with the, but I got lucky because one of the ones that will be coming off hold that's from the library is The Prince and the Dressmaker. So I'm very excited to read this book. I've heard such good things about it. So yes, that is going to be my the book. Number 3, I'm doubling up. It's to read a book where you've already seen the movie that is based on it. So again, Interview with the Vampire. For the first book you touch, I'm going to save that for the end because I'm going to do something a little bit different. Moving on to prompt 5, and that is to read a book completely outside of your house. I hate this. It's very hot. I live in the desert, so it's horrible in the summer. Every time they just want to torture us people who live in the desert. So because of that, I'm going with something very short. So that is The Inhumans by Right of Birth. And The Inhumans are some of my favorite superheroes. Medusa is my favorite superhero, and I've been very compelled by this because in human society, they choose basically who is supposed to mate together, so they always have like perfect breeding. And Black Bolt and Medusa, when they have their son, he was not approved by I don't know who approves Inhuman babies, but he was not approved. So this is about his birth, obviously, and I've been very interested in that whole system of how that works. So this has been on my list for a while, and I'm really excited to read it. So the next prompt is to read a book in a genre you've been wanting to read more from. So I chose All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. So this is nonfiction. I do like nonfiction, and I don't read it enough. I really would like to delve into it more, and I think that's something that I'm going to try to incorporate a lot more into my channel, is just continuing my education as an adult and just reading things that I'm interested in and exploring the world around me. And I think this is going to be a really compelling read. I've heard a lot of good things about it, and that cover is gorgeous. I almost feel like I need to buy it because it's so beautiful. But this is about a queer black man. He is an activist and a journalist, and so it's just about his childhood being a queer black child. And obviously it's an experience very different from my own in many ways. And it's just essays, and I'm getting the audiobook version, which I've heard is really good because it's read by the author. So I am incredibly intrigued, and I cannot wait to learn more from this perspective. And then the last prompt is to read a book that takes place on a continent that's different from the one you live on. So I'm going to read whatever volume I get to. If I read this one before that, Urusei Yatsura. This is by the same author of Rumiko Takahashi. She's the same author of Inuyasha, which is better known. And this is about an alien who comes down to Earth, and her father says that they're going to invade Earth unless someone can catch Lum, this main character, and grab her horns. So the chosen person to participate is Ataru, who I don't know if he's even on this cover, but he's just kind of like a numbskull. He's a womanizer. Not a really great protagonist. It's really hard to like, but it makes it very entertaining, especially when the two characters constantly butt heads, and it's really funny. Lum is very cute. I love this. My boyfriend and I have been watching the anime, and we've been reading these books, and I'm way behind, and I don't know why. I have no excuse to not be reading them because they're great. So yeah, this will be whichever volume. It all takes place in Japan. And then for that prompt that I held off to, which is to read the first book that you touch, I am going to bring in my boyfriend to help me with that. So I'm going to bring in Dustin. So this is Dustin. So for the last prompt is to pick the first book that I touch. So I was going to have you pick a couple like graphic novels because I don't want anything that's too long. I already chose my main novel. Yes. And
I'm very surprised by this prompt you're giving me.
I already recorded it once, but I didn't record audio, so...
I'm hearing this for the first time.
It's shocking, isn't it? Yes.
Okay.
So I'll close my eyes, and then I'll touch one, and then that'll be the one I read.
You're giving me a tough task because there's so many.
There's a lot that he's been trying to get me to read that I haven't been.
I can just go throw out the DVD collection, get all the movies I want you to watch, and
that's not one of the prompts.
Pick one. Yeah, this Star Wars Encyclopedia. It's very light reading.
3 volumes.
It covers 6 movies and an entire expanded universe worth of material.
I said short. Hi. Yes.
Alright, so you're going to reach out, and whatever it is you touch, you have to read.
I know, I set the rules.
Alright.
The cat. I have to read the cat.
Read me. This is a short but intense read. I'll try to spread them out. Reach.
I guess this one.
Alright.
Oh, you're the... Okay. So you want to explain what this is?
Yeah, okay. So, this is one of my favorite comics from my childhood. It says on there. Okay, 1989.
It's the year I was born.
But back in 1989, a series of comics came out. What's interesting with this, a little background. So, Mort Todd, who's the guy who signed this book, he was one of the editors at the infamous Cracked magazine, which is kind of like Mad Magazine for kids, if you never read that, which later became Cracked, the just a whole bunch of lists website after the magazine folded. But as in the latter days of Cracked magazine, Mort found some extra money that hadn't really been put on into any new content or anything, and so instead of paying comedy writers to do stuff, he kind of secretly hired a bunch of horror writers to make horror comics, and he compiled them together into Monsters Attack, which is an anthology horror series, kind of in the vein of Tales from the Crypt, but without a narrator. And it had a bunch of cool horror stories, horror pinups, and a lot of articles about classic horror movies and upcoming stuff as well. And yeah, he put that out, and when the publisher found out that he had snuck this money out to put this book together without asking anybody, at first he was in huge trouble and they were going to fire him, and then he gave him the sales number, and it was like the highest selling book they ever had. So they let him keep going. He was able to make 5 issues, but then the company got sold to a new publisher, and they didn't want to continue with any of the horror stuff. So Monsters Attack and like Cracked Monster Party were both canceled, and my subscription that I'd bought to this had to be transferred into normal Cracked instead, because I only went through a few issues before they ran out, and I'd already paid for a year's subscription to it. When I got this from the grocery store, attracted by the cover, which looked just like this, was the first issue's cover at the IGA back in my hometown. I read that thing probably cover to cover like 3 times, and immediately drew one of the monsters in it and sent a letter and a drawing of it to Mort Todd's letter column.
Aww.
It was not published, unfortunately. But the later issues are cool. So you can see the things that I learned from this are, aside from just all the classic horror movies, it has little sections on there you can see. Well, it will. They can tell who that is. It's Freddy Krueger in the blue, and Jason Voorhees there in the orange. So it had retrospectives. It had like their entire kill list, how many each of them had killed in which movie and by what way. So it has all these charts and everything. But it also introduced me to. Well, I was already familiar with Edgar Allan Poe, but it has some writings from Poe. It introduced me to H.P. Lovecraft. There's a comic adaptation of one of his stories in there. The first time I'd ever been introduced to Akira was in these pages, because before it came to the United States, there was a section on Akira. And it also has an interview with a very young Sam Raimi in it, who had just come off of Evil Dead and was about to do Darkman. So all kinds of great stuff in here, as well as just some really crazy. I mean, I don't know. It's almost to kids because it was on the comic rack, but it's really extremely gory and cool. It has some cool art from some greats like Steve Ditko, creator of Spider-Man, co-creator of Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, has some work in here. The reason this hasn't been collected from 1989 until today, so it took them 20 years. So this got printed late last year and distributed this year. It took 20 years to get this out, is because they tried to get the art for it, because the company, once Cracked became a digital-only thing, they were like, well, we can probably buy the art back at this point. And they had it in their vaults, and they approached them about getting the original pages. But before that happened, an anthrax envelope got sent to the place they held it, or well, they thought it ended up being a hoax, but they had an anthrax threat. Yeah. And the response to an anthrax threat is to burn everything in the building. And so all of the original artwork was destroyed in the resulting fire. And until a year or two ago, the scanning technology wasn't enough to make a clean enough scan off of a printed copy of the book in order to make a high enough resolution copy to print a new version of it. It just came out with all the paper crap was all over it, and it was all muddy. So they finally got it off the ground. It's really good. So.
What were the other 2 options?
The other two options were to start the Legend of the Five Rings novella series. Yeah. So this is the first one that came out, Sword in the Spirits.
I will read that. I wanted to. I just haven't gotten.
Yeah, I figured it'd be an excuse. And they're in their novellas. They're pretty quick. They're each about 110 pages, something like that. So this one based on the Phoenix Clan, really good. And the other one was also a cat-related thing. This is The Adventures of Samurai Cat.
Nice.
By Mark L. Brooks, Mark E. Rogers. Mark L. Brooks is a different guy.
Fun fact, Dustin's terrible with
I'm really bad with names. But this is a cool series. I'll just show off one of these pieces of art. So this is a one-man show to this. He did the writing and the art in it. Yeah, he painted the cover on there. You can see his initials on there. So he wrote a story. I don't remember why. I think it was for a college writing contest or something that started out very simple that he wrote into a full series. But it's a samurai cat.
Oh, I just noticed the cat with the machine gun.
Yeah, that's his nephew Shiro, I think. But his master gets killed by assassins, and his master was the most amazing samurai who ever lived. So it took 1,000 assassins to bring him down, and so he then has to avenge the death of his master. Before he can rest.
Is his master also a cat?
I believe he's a human. Yeah. But so he goes from land to land, going to kill the people who teamed up on it and destroyed his master, and they are all parodies of different like movie and book characters.
So you mentioned that.
Yeah, so he goes like it's all anachronistic. He goes with all these different timelines and everything.
Fun. So he's like Deadpool.
Yeah, kind of. So he's from to write whatever he wants into it. So, and there are a lot of puns and everything. But this copy's falling apart. But you see this painted picture. One of them is the Balrog from Lord of the Rings. You see him there fighting against the Balrog on the bridge of Cats of Doom. And then he goes to Outsmouth, which is this parody of H.P. Lovecraft's Innsmouth, and fights against this Cthulhu figure there. So he goes into Lovecraftian lore. And then Conan is the last one in this one. And in the sequel, he runs into both Indiana Jones and Han Solo and doesn't know why they don't realize that they look exactly the same.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. He did like 8 of these books, I think, something like that.
Alright, well, because you mentioned Legend of the Five Rings, if you're interested in me talking about any sort of like role-playing stuff, let me know, because we're playing D&D and Legend of the Five Rings. I can definitely give more information about that too, because I know L5R isn't that well known. But it's really interesting lore and everything. But that's going to do it for my Reading Rush TBR. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you soon.